TAPR DCC, Understanding DMR Networks, starting right now. Yeah, you guessed it, this is my talk. I was privileged to present this year at the TAPR DCC my new presentation about understanding DMR networks, to where I talk about the differences between the CBridge Network and a Brandmeister network. Special thanks to the guys out there that allowed me to give this talk and allowed me to record the rest of the talks. Hope you enjoy the episode.
All right, so let's go ahead and introduce Jason Johnston.
I got it.
Got to get focused here. KC5 HWB, his talk on understanding DMR networks. And one of the reasons why we put Jason in this position is for leading up to the next talk when we talk about DMR system for the Eclipse information is the next talk. So take it away, Jason.
Thank you very much. Okay, good evening. I don't know why, but I'm nervous presenting today, and I've done this presentation this one's actually fairly new. I have a DMR 101 intro production that I've done several times. But this one builds on knowledge, and it assumes that you already know what DMR is. Digital mobile radios. Anyone never heard of DMR, never talked on DMR? It's voice over IP or radio over IP. Everybody's familiar with it. So there's different networks out there that we don't have in D-Star or WiresX. You connect your Fusion repeater to a WiresX network, and it's all one network on WiresX, or the D-Star network. Reflector 2 Charlie or 4 Delta or whatever they're called are the same no matter where you go. But in DMR, if you connect to different talk groups and you're on a different network than somebody in a neighboring state or another part of your state, then you may or may not be able to talk with those people, because not all talk groups are connected. So we've had DMR in Texas since about 2010. That's me, obviously. The first DMR repeater was put up in Dallas, Texas around 2010, after the gentleman who put it up met with the Motorola Amateur Radio Club at Dayton of 2009, and they worked on it for a few months and put it up in early 2010, and it was connected to what's called a CBridge Network, and they named the network Lone Star, so it's Texas Lone Star. And today there's about 130, 140 repeaters on that network in the state of Texas, but we're starting to see some more repeaters on the Brandmeister network popped up. Brandmeister came around about 2015, so about 5 years after we had DMR in Texas. A lot of this talk focuses on the state of Texas, but here, when I got here last night, I pulled up my phone and did an R-Finder search, or you can use Repeater Book, either one, for repeaters in this DMR repeaters in this area. There's quite a few, and I saw 3 different networks within 15 miles of this hotel. Brandmeister, of course, you've got your Arizona Turbo guys, and the Rocky Mountain Ham, they've got their own CBridge as well. So I'm going to talk about the differences between all that. If anyone's from Texas or interested in Texas, we catalog everything at dmrtexas.net. There's places there to download code plugs. You can drill down by locations of the state to see different repeaters everywhere that we have. So the different networks primarily are DMR-marc, which is a misnomer. DMR-marc was the first network, the first CBridge to come online in the United States. They had the first DMR repeater, and they implemented the subscriber ID system, which is now lives on the website of radioid.net. But Glenn, he's a Canadian, and he's been on my YouTube show. He's run that system both on DMR-marc and on radioid.net for some time. So it recently changed from DMR-marc's website to radioid.net to register both your repeater and yourself for DMR subscriber IDs. But it's the same group of guys that's been doing it for the last several years. The other one is Brandmeister that we have here in the United States. They allow hotspots a lot more easily, and some talk groups are interconnected between the CBridge networks and DMR-marc. And then there's a network overseas called DMR Plus. I was on a Mediterranean cruise in July and did a same R-Finder search from my phone, and there's a lot of DMR Plus repeater connected, network connected repeaters in Spain and Italy and over there in Europe. We might have a few around the United States. I'm not aware of any. There's not any in Texas, not any around here I've ever seen, but that is another network that exists primarily overseas. So I titled this presentation, Understanding DMR Networks. I did not title it Comparing DMR Networks, and I did that very much on purpose. So it doesn't really matter which one's better. I mean, there's good features and poor features to all the networks. I'm not going to talk about DMR Plus today because it's not in the United States primarily, but Brandmeister, DMR-marc, CBridge, there's strong features of both networks and there's fallbacks of both networks. So don't think of it as which one is better. Which one is better is primarily it's going to be the one that's most likely, that's used the most in your state or your area or wherever you are. Because the last thing you want to do is put up a repeater and connect it to a network that the other dozen repeaters in your state aren't on. So just keep that in mind. But if anything, this is a short history of DMR in the USA. Actually, this is DMR in Texas, but it was started in 2009 by Paul K6EH, operating a UHF turbo repeater in standalone digital mode from Hollywood Hills in California, Los Angeles. So it kind of progressed from there, and you can read this history. This was actually easy to find. Scotty was talking about how everything was hard to find. This was actually easy to find. If you just go to DMR-marc's website and search for history, you can find history of DMR in the USA. This is the Texas part here where Dayton Hamvention, Jim Hopper, W5EBQ, and Paul had a meeting with the DMR-marc folks and established the first CBridge in Texas in 2000. Shortly after that, early 2010, DMR and Brandmeister started around 2015. They just celebrated their 3rd anniversary a couple months ago. I don't remember the exact date. So basically, you've got DMR-marc, which is on a CBridge, and you've got DCI Turbo, which is on a CBridge, and you've got Lone Star DMR-X, K4USD. K4USD is out of Atlanta. John Birmingham, W2XAB, runs that CBridge. If you've ever been to a DMR discussion at Dayton in the last 5 or 6 years, you've probably heard John speak about DMR. Ex-Motorola employee, very knowledgeable. Anytime I have a question about something with the CBridge related stuff, I ask him and he knows it. So what you have to understand is a CBridge is an independent network. And just because you hear the word CBridge does not mean DMR-marc. DMR-marc was one of the first CBridges. It was the first network in the USA. But everybody else who's put up a CBridge ever since then, they might be connected to DMR-marc and they might not be connected to DMR-marc. They can choose to do whatever they want to do. So it doesn't really matter. It's technically incorrect to say, oh, my repeater's connected to DMR-marc if you're connected to the Chicagoland CBridge or the Crossroads CBridge or the K4USD CBridge. So a CBridge is an independent network that can cross-connect to other networks, network CBridges, DMR-marc being one of those, or it can cross-connect to Brandmeister as well. So a CBridge can pass talk groups from any network it wants to. The CBridge configuration, basically, this is very rudimentary here, but DMR-marc establishes these regional talk groups. About the only talk groups DMR-marc originate. You can originate a talk group on a CBridge, or you can cross-connect to another CBridge and repeat their talk group. So the original TAC 310, 311, and 312s were not even originated on DMR-marc. They were originated on the DCI Turbo CBridge. TACs 313 through 319 today originate on DMR-X. And 310, 311, and 312, when Brandmeister came online, they put up those same talk groups and they interconnected to DCI Turbo. So if you're on TAC 310 on a repeater, Brandmeister or CBridge repeater, or on a hotspot, you're always going to be talking to the same folks. So those are some of the talk groups that are interconnected today. But Lone Star CBridge, they were the first ones to originate the Texas talk group of 3148. That's our statewide talk group number. There's 51 statewide talk groups in the United States, the 51st being Washington, D.C. And when CBridges first came online, what they said was, okay, put up a CBridge in your state, and then you originate that talk group number, whatever your statewide talk group number is. So if someone wants to connect to DMR-marc and repeat North America or worldwide from your CBridge, you can do that, but you originate your statewide talk group and your local Metroplex talk groups and your repeater-only talk groups, and that's all controlled from the local CBridge in that state or in that area. When Brandmeister came around, they basically did the same thing, except that they put all 51 statewide talk groups on their servers. They have what's called a master server, which does exactly the same thing a CBridge does. There's a few kind of nuances here and there. Some of them will do this and some of them do that. There's a big difference between, and this is true across every network, there's a big difference between what the technology will do and what the administrators are willing to do. The DMR-marc administrators were never willing to allow hotspots in their network because they thought it would degrade the quality of traffic on the network. That was weird. The DCI Turbo guys, they wrote a piece of software that would integrate an MMDVM device, be it a repeater or a hotspot or whatever, to the CBridge so that they could specifically do that. DMR-marc didn't want to do that, but DCI Turbo, they did that. And then, of course, Brandmeister, you can use Hytera, Motorola, MMDVM, hotspot, whatever you want, MMDVM style repeater or hotspot. They allow pretty much everything on their network. But when they put up their master servers, they recreated all these statewide talk groups, about a third of which were already in use somewhere. And instead of routing to those, and they contacted some people and said, can we connect to your statewide? Some people said yes, some people said no, it just depended. But no matter what state you're in, you can get the statewide talk group. If you're in Florida, you can get the other 49 states. If you're in Texas, you can get the other 49 states. And when the CBridges did it, they said, well, the statewide talk group is for repeaters in that state. And then if we want to talk to people in another state, we have TAC channels, user-activated channels. We have North America. We have the regional channels and that kind of thing. There's lots of talk groups. Brandmeister claims they have over 1,000 talk groups. And they do. I mean, that's accurate information. They have over 1,000 talk groups on their system. But they are not segregated at all. When you connect a repeater to Brandmeister, you basically get everything. You get to choose what is static, and everything sent to you is dynamic, so it's on push-to-talk timeout. And then you get to choose what's static on your repeater. But they don't disconnect anything. Like, you can get into a talk group overseas. You can get into a talk group, you know, in any other state, in Canada, South America, and whatnot. So it created some confusion because people in Texas is a really big state. And we got about 13 or 14 repeaters in the North Texas area right now, Dallas, Fort Worth. There's 8 or 10 down in the Houston area. Midland, Odessa is online. But there's a lot of outlying areas in the state that don't have any repeaters. So when Brandmeister came online, people got these hotspots and they connected to Texas 3148 on Brandmeister. Well, it wasn't interconnected to the original Lone Star 3148 on the CBridge that had been around for 5 years longer than that. So it created a lot of confusion, like, well, how come this is here and you guys aren't doing this? And they ended up connecting the two 3148s together for a few weeks, and a lot of the repeater owners complained because there was all these other stations around the country rag chewing on the Texas statewide talk group when none of the stations involved in that rag chew were in Texas. So they basically were using it as another North America talk group or another TAC 310 talk group. And it was like, you know, that's not what the statewide talk groups should be used for, in their opinion. And so it ended up getting disconnected, and so today in Texas, if you're on a repeater 3148, you're probably not talking on the same 3148 that Brandmeister has. So a CBridge, I purchased my own CBridge about a year ago, and I'm going to talk about the CBridge, I'm going to talk about the Brandmeister dashboard, and they do a lot of things that are the same. The CBridge will let you connect all that drop-down list at the top left corner there is, does this pointer work? That drop-down list at the top left pointer there, there it is all the different types of connections that a CBridge will do. Some people think a CBridge will only do Motorola repeaters, and for the purposes of IPSC, which is that fifth one down, that's correct because IPSC is a proprietary Motorola connection. But it'll do all these other different things besides IPSC. That top one says analog. You could build basically what's very similar to a very robust all-star network using CBridge connected repeaters over the internet. So you could do that, and then you could cross-connect those analog talk groups into a DMR talk group if you wanted to. Again, there's a lot of stuff that a CBridge will do that some of the CBridge owners may or may not be willing to do. APRS traffic can be passed over this. GPS traffic can be passed over a CBridge. Most of the CBridge owners turn that off because they think it degrades the quality of voice. And it can, that's true, but most hams want that sort of thing. So the biggest takeaway today is that DMR-marc does not equal CBridge. If you have a CBridge connected repeater in your town, you are not necessarily on DMR-marc. The two CBridge connected repeaters here in Albuquerque, one is on Rocky Mountain Ham Network and one is on the Arizona Turbo Network. And neither one of those are connected to DMR-marc. Now, they may pass DMR-marc talk groups like Worldwide North America, but they're not owned by or administered by DMR-marc. DMR-marc can call those guys and say, hey, we don't like the way you're doing this, and they can say, okay, that's fine, they should pull the plug on DMR-marc, then they've got their own independent CBridge. I've heard of that happening one time. But most of the information that I've got for this is, I put this presentation together because I was reading a bunch of stuff. Now here's the kicker. Facebook. I'm not going to talk bad about I'm going to try not to talk bad about Facebook. Facebook is a great source of information. It's an even better source of bad information. Because everything I've ever read about 75% of everything I've ever read about a CBridge on Facebook is incorrect. I saw a guy one time saying that he was grateful that his Brandmeister, his local DMR repeater, he had one guy up there who he claims used to charge them to use his DMR repeater, and then if they held a QSO too long, he'd get on, the repeater trustee would get on the air and tell him to get off. He claims that. Maybe it happened. It's certainly possible. But that guy was on a CBridge connected network. I don't know which one. He said it was a dmr-marc repeater, so whatever that means. And then a Brandmeister repeater came up, and he's like, yeah, that guy uses, he lets anybody use it, and he doesn't care. He's a really nice guy. I'm like, okay. So what I hear you say when I hear you say that is that, let's tell a story about maybe when you first got your license, you were talking on a local 2-meter repeater, and you and your buddies were all talking on 2 meters because that's where we all start, right? That's where I started. And there used to be this guy that would get on there at Friday nights at 10 o'clock, and he'd get drunk, and he'd key down over people, and he'd start making a bunch of noise. And that guy used a Kenwood radio. So I don't ever want to use a Kenwood radio because that guy was a lid, and he used a Kenwood radio. Okay, yeah, that makes no sense. Just because one guy had a DMR-marc or a CBridge or a Brandmeister connected repeater, and that guy was kind of a jerk to work with, that doesn't mean everybody else on that network is. It's not a fair comparison. It doesn't mean everybody with a Motorola repeater is going to act that way. It doesn't mean everybody with an MMDVM repeater is going to act that way. So it's not a good analogy that way. Unfortunately, we've had that happen on both sides of the fence, and it's like, all right, guys, come on, let's take a step back here. So a CBridge has built in what's called a net watch. You can pull up a net watch from any CBridge that's out there. Some of them are connected together, some of them aren't. Some of the talk groups are connected together. This is the net watch from my CBridge, which is from the Bridgecom guys here up in Kansas. And you can see the traffic. There's no audio passed over the internet, but you can see the traffic. You can see the person. This is where they're coming in from, whether it's a repeater or hotspot. This is the person who's talking right now, and this is the talk group that they're on. And then you've got RSSI configurations, which network they're on. Notice some say DMR-marc, this one says DMR-X, that one is BM for Brandmeister. So there's different networks that can be passed through there. And then you've got a loss rate, and sometimes that's measurable, sometimes it's not. Depends on most of the time loss rates aren't measurable from a hotspot. So the CBridge offers what's called a net watch, where you can monitor traffic, sit there on your computer, and oh, there's my buddy Bob. He's over there on this talk group, so you key your radio up and talk to him. Brandmeister has a dashboard where one of the advantages Brandmeister has over the CBridge is that if you connect your repeater to the Brandmeister network, you can log into this dashboard and you can control several things from your repeater. You can control which time slot gets what talk groups. Now you can't turn anything off. You still get everything that they pipe out, and it's all in dynamic PTT timeout. So you may never use about 600 or 700 of the talk groups out there, but you can't physically turn that off. I've heard Brandmeister repeater owners complain that some guy was traveling through their town and he keyed up their Brandmeister repeater and he's on a talk group that they never use, and he was talking to his buddies back home, maybe overseas, and he's like, he took over our time slot for 30 minutes. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you can't turn anything off on Brandmeister. It's all there. Now, I traded some emails with the Brandmeister admins, and they say that they are going to add that feature where you can go in there and turn off talk groups. So if you have one guy who keeps taking over your time slot and you've asked him not to, you can go in there and turn off this talk group. As of the last time I spoke to him, that wasn't ready yet, but apparently they're adding that. But you can go in there and tell it which static talk groups you want on your repeater, so that you can, and a static talk group is one that's on full time. So 24/7, you can monitor that talk group on your radio and you can hear all the traffic on it. A dynamic talk group is usually activated by chunking the repeater, and it stays active for about 10 or 15 minutes, depending on how you set it up. And then you can, if you're holding a conversation, every time you rekey that repeater, that timer starts over. So you can key your repeater up every 3 or 4 minutes and hold a conversation, and then when your conversation is done, 10, 15 minutes lapse, and that talk group goes silent again. So that's what's called a dynamic talk group. And most of the talk groups on Brandmeister are dynamic. You really don't want too many static talk groups on your repeater because they'd crash into one another. If there was traffic on multiple talk groups, then they would be, the repeater would listen to the first one that it heard, and as soon as that guy dropped and then there was traffic on another one, it'd pick up the other one. So it can't differentiate that sort of thing. You can also create clusters. A cluster is basically what a CBridge does. A cluster takes, instead of connecting a time slot to the Brandmeister master server, you can connect, like you say you've got 5 repeaters here in Albuquerque and you want to connect time slot 2 to Brandmeister to the master server. They're still connected to Brandmeister, but time slot 2 is connected to the master server. So you can get TAC 310 in the statewide, North America, worldwide, and all these other talk groups out there. Time slot 1, you're going to connect to your cluster, and you're going to cluster in these other 4 repeaters that are in your area. So you've got a network of 5 repeaters, and you create what's called a cluster or a local talk group. And it's usually done on talk group 2, sometimes talk group 10. You can make up your own talk group, I think, for it. But you can cluster your repeaters together so that those local talk groups are all just right here. People from the outside, they can't get into it. You can sync it with the Brandmeister talk group if you want someone from the outside world to get in, but you don't have to do it that way. The purpose of a cluster is to create a localized talk group. And that's basically what a CBridge does, is it creates multiple clusters. You can create as many clusters as you want on time slot 1 and time slot 2, and you can connect those clusters to outside talk groups if you want to other CBridges or to Brandmeister. But it's basically the same thing. It works, it accomplishes the same goal, I'll put it that way. Brandmeister has a thing called hose line. I don't know where they came up with that word, but that's what they call it, hose line. You go to hose.brandmeister.network on the internet. You can not only hear, you can see, this is everything, and this list scrolls by very fast. You can see they're all on talk group 310. That's because I'm on the URL 310. If you go to hose.brandmeister.network / and then the number of the talk group, you can listen specifically to that talk group. If you just go to the main page, this thing scrolls by at 90 miles an hour and you see everything. So you can monitor the talk group and it passes audio over the internet. It pulls this information here from, I believe from QRZ. They started pulling information from QRZ a while back, and without QRZ's permission, QRZ shut them off. They either work that out or they're pulling from the FCC database now. I don't know which one, but usually the person who's talking, their picture on QRZ will show up here. So I'm thinking that they still pull it from QRZ. And then it shows their audio level, and you can listen to, then you can actually hear audio passed through your web browser on your computer so that you can monitor traffic. You can't key up on your web browser, obviously. You'd have to still buy a hotspot or repeater with a DMR radio. But it's a little bit more advanced than the NetWatch because it'll let you hear audio. It's not as good. I mean, you've got to account for internet latency and all that kind of good stuff, but sometimes it's definitely worth. And you can see the last stations here, which you can see that on NetWatch too, so you can see if somebody you want to talk to is on there, you can get on that talk group and listen to them or communicate with them. So hose line access can be monitored by everyone. It passes audio and can connect to talk groups from other hotspots. This is a good and a bad feature. It can be monitored by anyone. So if you want, sometimes I hear Brandmeister people ask, how do I get on a talk group that's private? Private meaning anyone from outside the area can't connect to it. Most people understand that this is amateur radio. It's not encrypted traffic, or not supposed to be. Anybody with a scanner or an SDR dongle or a radio can hear your traffic. You're not going to have a private talk group, but there's a difference between having a cluster of talk group, a clustered talk group here in Albuquerque, and then say maybe a non-clustered talk group, a Brandmeister talk group here in Albuquerque, where somebody from Texas or somebody from New York or somebody from Canada comes in and interrupts your conversation and says, "Hey guys, how's it going? I saw your activity over here." So there's really no way to eliminate that. I asked the Brandmeister admins again, I was like, is there a way to have a Brandmeister talk group that's not a cluster, but an actual Brandmeister master server talk group and not have it pass over hose line? And they said, no, we don't do that. We won't allow that. Again, that's something that they're not willing to do, not necessarily something they can't do. So hose line access is monitored by everyone. So just be aware, if you're on a Brandmeister talk group, anybody can connect to your conversation, which is not good or bad. It's just the fact. So between the two, CBridge and Brandmeister can both originate talk groups. Anybody can own a CBridge. CBridges cost money. You have to pay for licensing. You can go to Bridgecom. You can go to Rayfield Communications I think they're in St. Louis. It is a commercial tool. There's a lot of commercial companies out there using a CBridge, but anybody can buy a CBridge and you can do whatever you want to with it. Does not get administered by DMR-marc just because you own your own CBridge. I asked the Brandmeister admins, I was like, if I want to buy my own master server and put it in a data center over here in Texas, can I do that? They're like, well, you can do it, but we're not going to hook it into our network. So they want to control the master servers in their network. Again, good, bad, ugly, I don't know, but these are the facts. So anybody can own a CBridge and connect it anywhere you want to. Master server owned by Brandmeister, and you're limited to what they want you to do with it. Either ones can pass talk groups from other, the CBridge can pass talk groups from other CBridge or from Brandmeister. Technically Brandmeister can pass talk groups from a CBridge. In fact, one of the Brandmeister admins is one of the admins on the Pennsylvania CBridge. And I talked with him quite a bit. He's very helpful in putting this together, this presentation. He gave me a lot of information about it. He's like, yeah, you can do that. He goes that most CBridge owners, including DMR-marc, they don't want to pass their talk groups to Brandmeister because the Brandmeister's then going to spit it out to the rest of the world. And they're like, if we have a North America talk group, we want it to be in the United States and Canada. We don't want it to be passed to repeaters in South America or in Europe or in overseas. If we have a regional talk group for Southeast United States, we don't want it to be passed to people in Canada and South America, et cetera, et cetera. So for that reason, most CBridge owners have chosen not to give their talk groups to Brandmeister. There are some exceptions to that. Bronx Turbo has a CBridge, and apparently they have a lot of interconnected talk groups between the CBridge and Brandmeister. So again, it's about what the administrators want to do. So strengths. CBridge is more customizable because I can choose whatever talk groups I want, and I don't have to take any talk groups that are forced down by the administrators. Really depends on what you want to do with your repeater. I'm a big believer in the fact that if you spend your money on a repeater and antenna, feedline duplexers, maybe tower space, maybe monthly internet service, I kind of think that you should be the one that gets to say what happened to your repeater. If you connect it to Brandmeister, that's not as true as if you connect it to a CBridge. I'll put it that way. You can still say what happens to it, and you get that neat dashboard that we don't have on the CBridge where you can go in there and tell it certain things, but there's certain stuff they make you take and make you do that you don't have any choice over. So private talk groups are easier on a CBridge, easier but not impossible on Brandmeister. Brandmeister is easier to use hotspots on. So if you're in an area that doesn't have a repeater, but say you live 50 miles from Albuquerque and you want to talk to the Albuquerque guys, you can get on a hotspot and connect to those guys over here with Brandmeister repeaters. So it's easier to administer your repeater on the dashboard and use a hotspot on Brandmeister, but the CBridge is mostly repeaters, but through the HB Link, DMR Link software that the DCI Turbo guys came up with, we are able to put hotspots on a CBridge network now also. There's been some kind of headbutting on that because a lot of the CBridge owners don't want that, but a lot of them do, and I'm one of the ones that do. I think it's good. I was like, as long as we keep it, professional, I think we're going to be okay with that. So it's worked out well so far. I've got a hotspot out in my truck that's connected back to, to the Texas repeaters back home. So again, this is just all these conferences up here are going to be, I actually wrote this one to be a half hour, but usually I get questions in the middle. So are there any questions? I went through that rather quick, I feel like, but I've only got 10 minutes left. Yes, sir.
I noticed you didn't say anything about DMR Gateway and the XLX reflector.
I'm not real familiar with DMR Gateway. We don't use it in Texas. That doesn't mean anything. The XLS reflector system is not generally used in the United States. You can get on XLS reflectors through a hotspot, of course, but that's more of the DMR, that's more the DMR Plus network that I didn't talk about.
We have the largest running D-Star network in the United States and in the world, and it runs on XLX.
There you go. Well, so I'm not as familiar with D-Star as I am with DMR.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Yep.
This has been Ham Radio 2.0, a YouTube production by KC5HWB. Visit our website at www.livefromthehamshack.tv. Please also stop by our Facebook page at fb.me/hamradio2. Be sure and subscribe here on YouTube to keep up with all the new videos that are posted nearly every Monday. 73s everyone, and thanks for watching.